Okay, good afternoon. Okay, good afternoon. Our Utilities Committee is in session. And our committee members have had a chance to review the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve today's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And none are opposed. Okay, so we do have a agenda for today's utilities meeting. And today is going to be our Scada system presentation. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Scada. Close enough.
Scada, tomato, tomato.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So go ahead and take it away.
All right. Well, just a couple intros before we get started.
You got
So
it.
you've all met Scott Devlin. He's the operations manager for Public Works. Ed Andrews on the screen is the water operations supervisor, and Lance Spomberg on the screen, who's going to give the presentation. He's the star of the show today. He's a senior control tech, so he's responsible for production conveyance of the water system. And with that said, take it away, Lance. Oh, you're on mute, Lance.
I'm sharing a screen. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, so today I'm going to give a presentation on the city utility SCADA system. For the city of Lacey, the SCADA system operates the water and the wastewater utilities. This is the group of people that maintain that system. It's myself and several control technicians. A couple of those people are in the wastewater division. 3 of those people work for me in water. And what SCADA stands for is supervisory control and data acquisition. And essentially the short version of that is that computer system runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, monitors all of our water and wastewater facilities. This is a basic diagram of how the master telemetry computer here down at the maintenance shop goes out through several systems, through radios and through cellular modems, kind of like cell phones, and talks to the various facilities. Combined, we're approaching 100 facilities that we talk to, and it just rolls through those constantly. So some of these sites are communicated with every couple minutes. This is like an overview screen showing all 7 of our city production reservoirs, 20 wells, all 7 booster stations. Kind of this is the entire water system in a nutshell. This is the same screen for the wastewater. There are, I believe it shows 69 lift stations, but some of the numbers have been deleted, so they're probably in the 50s as far as the total number of pump stations.
Hey, Lance, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the schematic here? You see some of these little icons filled in green.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, if you could just elaborate a little more on what we're looking at.
Sure, I can just go back one, previous. So as far as pumps go, this is an active screen. So this screen is live. Any pump that is green is currently running. Any pump that is gray is off. And any red that you see on that screen is an indicator of an alarm. So for instance, there is an alarm at ATEC, there is an alarm at well 9, and there is an alarm out at the treatment plant at source 19 and 31. And the same thing applies to the wastewater. Green pumps are actually running at this moment. Red would be an indicator of an alarm. And then you
So I'm
got
seeing a
just-
lot of red, Lance.
Yeah.
Should we be concerned?
Right now with the wind, this isn't actually the live Scada, but about an hour ago, the screen turned very red.
Okay,
The wind blew and pretty much the entire Northeast dropped out of power.
okay.
People are on the job working
There's
24/7.
people out there, yes. Yep. And kind of they went this morning, they got everything going again. And then about a half hour, an hour ago, another gust came through and the places where they had just been dropped out again.
Nice.
Here are some pictures of some of the wastewater facilities. Some of our lift stations, the pumps and the liquid is underground. What's above ground is these type of control panels. You can see on the far right one, there's a telemetry antenna sticking up kind of next to a light pole. The one at the bottom kind of shows the newer covers that we've put on to keep the technicians out of the rain and snow and whatever it may be when they're standing there working on those cabinets. Also as a generator, an on-site generator sitting next to that cabinet. Here is what that particular lift station looks like on the Scada. 4 pumps, a generator, a list of texts there. If there was an alarm, control voltage, high level, those texts would turn red. Pumps or the generator would actually show that it's running. This is one of the production water wells. So you can see the pump is green, the well is flowing. It's flowing 1,054 gallons a minute. There's 53 PSI of pressure on the downstream side of that pipe. You can see that the current chlorine residual is 0.30. The pH is 7.6 and the temperature is 55 degrees. So we get a lot of very useful information from the Scada system. And also all of this information is being logged. So an engineer can go back in, pick a specific time frame. He can look at what was the pressure, what was the flow, etc.
That's pretty slick.
This is a picture of a standard well. Initially, the city of Lacey was not a chlorinated system. So we had a lot of well houses. And then when we became chlorinated, we had to go back in and put the little building that you see to the left. Those were added separately. And then within that building is a chlorine storage tank and a chemical injection pump and some chlorine analyzing equipment. So very typically at most of our wells, we have a couple buildings because of chlorination was added later. Again, there's the telemetry radio antenna sticking up out of the building. We've kind of been going through in a process. The radio system we have has become antiquated. It's obsolete. You can no longer buy the radios. So we're switching all of our facilities over to a cellular system. Right now we have probably 10 or so that we've switched over in the water side. They might have a little bit more in wastewater, but probably it'll take a couple more years. But eventually all of those will be on cellular. Here is a typical booster pump station. This particular booster pump station provides fire flow. So it has one small pump that's a jockey, 3 large pumps. Those are all for fire flow. There's also a tank at this location. You can see it shown on the screen. This is that same booster station from the outside. This is over at the west side. We also have automated PRV valves. Our system is pretty complex. We have like 9 pressure zones. So we have several places throughout the city where we can move water down the pressure zones. So these PRVs are automated and they actually can function like a pump. They can take water from the 400 zone, for instance, and move it to the 337 zone if there's a demand for it. And then you can also take wells. We're real heavy on wells in the 400 zone, but you can turn on a well in a 400 zone and then activate a PRV and move that water to a lower zone. This is what one of those looks like. This is over in the Union Mills complex over there. But for instance, this could be activated to move water from the Madrona well field, which is to the right, and it moves it through here to the Union Mills Reservoir, which is on the left side. The system consists of mainly here at the shop, there's like a main PLC. That's kind of the brain. It makes the decisions on the water side. It looks at the reservoirs based on set points. It starts and stops pumps. On the wastewater side, all we do is monitor the facilities. The decision to run a pump or not is made on site. The PLC is located at the facility. It looks at the liquid in the wet well, and then it determines to turn a pump on or not. Kind of, it's the criticalness of wastewater. You get the delay through the system to talk to that facility. And for instance, in an outage in water, you know, sometimes a communication will quit, and it's not as critical that we talk to that, you know, every half an hour or so. Where in wastewater, things can get ugly pretty fast. So you wouldn't want that delay. So the decision is made at the site, and then it's monitored through the Scada system to determine if it's an alarm or not. We use a standardized Rockwell software. That's nice. That's all across the board. So the reporting, the archiving, all of the access, it's the same software brand within the PLCs, and kind of it all plays nicely together. Sometimes you can end up with several different brands and types. And in the past, we've had trouble with this controller talking to this pump, talking to this, where this is, we've kind of standardized. It's the same all the way across the board. And this system is able to be viewed by myself, engineers, supervisors, technicians, and we have a whole standby program where people use iPads and cell phones, and they can access the system 24 hours a day.
So are other jurisdictions, are they similar in scope with design and interface, or are they completely different?
Very similar. Pretty much every large city has a Scada system. I've been here 29 years, so ours has really advanced, kind of like all technology has advanced. Back in the day, it was circular charts and a little phone thing that would send out a little pager notification, where now we actually get a text and it'll detail what's failed, where it's at. But I think most any of the larger cities, you know, I'm going to guess somebody that serves a couple thousand people has some sort of a Scada system. And also, like anything, the prices, you know, what cost tens of thousands of dollars years ago is now hundreds.
So if I could just clarify one point. So there's a lot of similarity in SCADA systems, but the systems themselves, there's a vast difference in complexity. And we have a very complex water system. Take Olympia, for example, or a Spokane, they were incorporated in the late 1800s. They had a master plan. They put together a system based on that master plan. Whereas Lacey was incorporated in the late 1960s and bought, purchased, and bootstrapped systems together.
Right.
So we have, typically more wells, more sources, more reservoirs, more booster stations, more moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
So we have probably one of the more complex water systems compared to others, and Lance or Ed could dive into a deeper detail if you want them to there. But I just wanted to clarify, a lot of similarities in SCADA systems in terms of complexity, but in terms of the systems themselves, we have a very complex system.
Are there any shortfalls, Lance, that we're hoping to improve upon, or? I mean, it looks pretty slick the way you set it, the way it's set up now, but are there
Yeah.
shortfalls that we could improve on over time, or?
The shortfall we've run into was the radio. We purchased actual radio frequencies. And what we ran into was, like anything, as it got phased out, we've only got one guy who can work on it. He's in his 70s. They don't sell the parts anymore, but this thing has purred along for, going on 2 decades. So it doesn't cost us a lot, but the ability to buy, well, first off, when we have new facilities, we can't buy the radios anymore. So that became a problem. Then they won't fix them anymore. We can't get them repaired. So that was our shortfall, was we either have to change out the entire radio system or we have to go to something else. And what was recommended by our Scada provider was going cellular. And that's similar to what like Lot and several of the other local utilities, they're using cellular.
Good.
And we all know from just how popular cell phones are, that's where the real solid infrastructure is, where we kind of had to build our own radio system. And eventually, as we expanded, we had to put in repeaters, and it just became more and more complex. And again, getting someone who can work on it has become harder and harder.
An act of Congress.
So this system, what it does is this, kind of like I said in the beginning, it monitors everything 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When we're all at night asleep in bed, this thing is plugging along, and it's constantly looking at all these facilities, all these different set points, all these things throughout the water and wastewater system. And we've got 3 standby programs that monitor from Scada, essentially water, wastewater, and treatment. And there are people that are on call that they will receive a text if there's any sort of a problem. And then they can utilize their phone, or we also give them iPads to log into the system, and they're looking at this same Scada as if they were sitting at the desk. So we have a software program called Top View that monitors, sends out these alarms, requires the technician to respond and acknowledge the alarm. And it uses either a Verizon modem or it goes through our network. It'll use a phone line. We got several redundant systems there. This is an example of equipment that a technician might have. He might have a laptop, he might have an iPad or a cell phone. And on the right is an example of what he might get as an alarm. Here is what, let's see. This is the master PLC. This is located here at the shop. This is kind of the brain. All of the program is in there. This is more the radio stuff. And essentially we have 3 PLCs. So we have 3 brains there because we're using 3 radio repeaters. This is all specifically just for the radio system. So at 3 of our water towers, we've put an antenna up on top. There's one at Hawks Prairie, McAllister, and Judd Hill. And that covers the entire city geographically. Here's an example of one of those out at a facility. It's got a standby propane generator. You can see the repeater there on the right-hand picture. That's the equipment. There's an antenna up on the reservoir.
Hey, Lance, if I may.
Sure.
Is that propane generator going to be replaced? I know we're doing a bunch of generator replacements and stuff.
These are only on hand for this radio system.
And
They're
you're
not
going
like
to be getting away from the radio system, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep. So we really don't have these in line to get rid of them, and they're not like the lift stations. We put those in several years ago. I don't know that we've ever actually ran on generator, but I know we go out and do a fair amount of maintenance on them. So as far as I know, I think that those repeaters are going to go away, and then you're not going to need that generator.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Lance.
Yeah, the propane generators are very simple and are intended for very, very low amperage.
Right.
So yes, when we think generator, we're thinking of.
Yeah, I think powering a house or a building.
Propane generators are for different use, yeah.
So, and we have backups for these systems in the case of, pick your poison. System were to go down, is there a backup for this or?
Yes, and all three repeaters, we have all the various components as spares. But the problem I have is the guy that built these, like I said, he's in his mid to late 70s. He's essentially retired. He'll come down and help us, and he uses the money for airplane parts.
I'm not talking about the repeaters. I'm talking about the system itself.
So you're talking about the radio system?
No, the actual system that functions and controls water and wastewater.
The Scada system.
The Scada, thank you, the Scada system.
Yes, there is a spare of the master PLC that can be programmed and used. And kind of one of the other things we've talked about is making a secondary out at our treatment plant, making that, if a bomb went off and blew this building up, we could go out there and throw a switch and run the city from that location.
Mm-hmm.
But there's redundancy in servers. There's a redundant server up at City Hall. We have the spare parts on the shelf. So the only other step would be to have a whole functioning site that you could flip a switch and let it take control.
I would think that would be at least a relative priority to have set up.
Yeah, it's on our list.
Yep, good.
So this is just an example of when we go through and upgrade the cellular. This first picture is what a cellular antenna looks like. We've upgraded the interface for the technicians. The screen, you see the touch screen. And then over here, you can see the modem and some of the equipment that gets installed into the control panel. So when we upgrade these, now we actually have redundant. They'll run on cellular and they'll run on radio. And that's it.
Thanks, Lance.
Sure.
You could stop the screen share. Any questions from the committee?
Hi, this is Carolyn. I'm sorry I couldn't see what you were presenting. I was trying to follow in my mind's eye, but I think it's fun that the weather actually presented some real live situation here to illustrate that. And my question is, do you have somebody that this guy who you referenced, who's in his 70s, can train so that you do have that resource going forward?
Well, he's not an employee, he's a contractor. And we have tried several other businesses, but this was such a specialized niche. I've never found anybody who could ever fix it. They did a lot of head scratching. Wow. So to answer your question, our staff has gone with him as much, gotten as much training from him as we can, but we've also realized he's kind of a dying breed. So we needed to start switching these things over. So we have had a couple instances with our repeaters where we were kind of, at the mercy of getting a hold of him and having him come down here and tell us what was wrong, because we kind of reached the end of our expertise.
Right. Hey, great. Well, thank you. And thank you for such a good presentation.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Stedman, do you have anything to add?
Nothing on this end. Thanks, guys. Keep up the good work.
So my question would be, what do you need from the council? Where's support? What can we do to help make your lives a little easier, I guess is what I'm asking.
So we definitely want to try to speed up the conversion as far as to cellular. But all the problems we've ran into now, we can't get parts. I've had the parts for some of these upgrades on order for 6 to 8 months. For the first time in my 29 years of working for the city, I ordered used parts. I've never done that before. That was the only way I could get some of these upgraded cards to get these things to run on cellular. So that's become a real issue for us. And again, we just seem like we have fewer and fewer employees here who are capable of installing, fixing, repairing a lot of this equipment just because it's become so complex.
So I guess to answer your question, so all this is addressed through the budget process,
Right.
and like Lance and Ed will get together, and then I'll go through Scott and me and to Scott Spence. And yeah, there's always been support for these kind of needs. Sometimes it does get down to staffing issues, but yeah, so the best thing council can do, and council's always been very supportive, is, when we make the request for rates, is to support that, because that pays for this.
That pays for this, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the primary reason why we exist, is to ensure our infrastructure stays intact. Okay, great. Anything else for the good of the order?
Well, I could add something to that is on this conversion to the cellular, we did do a study with our controls integrator, Scada Inc., Michael Smith, and we looked at other options. We looked at fiber optic, we looked at hard phone lines, we looked at other radio frequencies, other radio systems. And so all of that analysis was done, and we settled on the Verizon was the most efficient way to go. And in addition to money, and what Lance pointed out as far as parts being hard to get, our controls integrator can only handle so much work. So if we were to say, hey, we have all this money and we're going to convert the whole system to cellular in 1 year, they wouldn't be able to handle that workload. They would say, no way, because there is a significant amount of programming that has to take place. And there's a lot of work on our end of our technicians going out and supporting the installation and inputting the programming. And so we're biting off a little each year and being able to do it as everybody's workload permits. That's kind of how the approach we took, is to just do it ourselves, use Scada Inc. for the programming, and see what we can bite off each year. And like Lance mentioned, in a couple more years, we'll be done.
Good. Seems reasonable.
Yep.
Okay. Outstanding. Anything else, gentlemen?
No, not unless you have any other questions.
I don't. Anything from the council before we adjourn? Nope.
No, just, great job as usual, everybody. I'm a big fan, Hey, Scott, Edgar, if you, Rockstar Rick, have you heard anything from him? I'm sure he's retired now, eh?
I haven't. I don't know if Ed or Lance have, but yeah, I haven't heard from Rick in quite some time.
Yeah. Well, if anybody does, tell him I said hi. He's a great guy, just like, most everybody at the city and when it comes to public works. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you all for being here. Thanks for the effort, and appreciate the presentation, and always keep us abreast if there's anything that the council can do to help be more supportive. And I appreciate being able to turn my water on without incident and be able to flush my toilets and all that good stuff. So I appreciate you guys are in the background doing a fantastic job, and I'm just glad that we had a chance to see all this. All right, so without any other comments or questions, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting, and everybody have a wonderful day.
Thank you.